evening. Welcome to the Jefferson County Board of Education meeting on Tuesday, July 11th. If you please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started tonight, I would like to just have a moment of silence, if you would, for a member of our community that we lost yesterday, Mr. Glenn Edwards. He was a driver's ed teacher at Jefferson High School, as well as a swim and tennis coach, and also started the tennis program over at Jefferson Memorial Park. So if you'd just give us a moment, please. Thank you. Next up, we have something very exciting. We have the swearing in of our new superintendent, Dr. Chuck Bishop, and we've got Jackie Shedel here with us to actually swear him in. So if you would like to come on up and make it very official, come on up here, that's fine.
I state your name,
I, Chuck Bishop,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of West Virginia.
and the Constitution of the State of West Virginia.
I state your name,
I, Chuck Bishop,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully discharge and perform
that I will faithfully discharge and perform
the duties of superintendent
the duties of superintendent
of Jefferson County Schools
of Jefferson County Schools
to the best of my skill and judgment
to the best of my skill and judgment
and according to law.
and according to law.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I would also like to note that his family, his wife Ann and his daughters Aubrey and Bailey, are also here to join us and support him. And we all know that being a superintendent is not an easy job, and so you definitely need a supportive family to get you through the days and nights and middle of the nights and weekends. Really, it was a 9-to-5 job we promised you, right? But we're just very excited to have you, Dr. Bishop, and we're excited about the path ahead. So thank you very much, and thank you to your family for being here to support you. All right, next up we have Mrs. Joyce White with operations update.
I'm sorry. Surprise, I'm not Mr. Banks. I'm going to give you an operations update this evening. And at the end, I promise to dovetail in a little instruction in honor of Mr. Banks and the update you were to receive. The new Ranson Elementary School continues to progress on schedule. If you've been by the site, I'm sure you've seen it's very, very busy. My favorite thing right now is the Volvo truck with the tiny, tiny horn. But aside from that, it's on schedule, as I said, and we're all working hard to keep it so. One thing that I will signal you to is that electrical gear has very long lead times. And we have ordered that, but it had a 57-week lead time. I've learned today, however, that May 2024, we're expecting that, and that will be on schedule with Shockey's outlined schedule. So I just want to let you know that if one thing in this project is going to slow us down, it's going to be the electrical gear. But so far, they have overcome that obstacle. So fingers crossed. Right now, the Shockey is working on bringing the site up to grade. They have started the playground, and they have that all level, believe it or not, and the parking lots. 2 weeks out, they're going to finish they finished the cut and fill of the playfield areas. They've done some drilling and blasting in the pad area, and we're pretty much past that. And they're looking at manholes and the site. They're finishing the look at sewer and the sanitary next. They're just grading the site. There's plenty of topsoil there, so they're looking to compact things down. Due to our acreage, as you know, we have plenty of dirt, but there are exciting things going on. They have sectioned this site into 4 sections, A, B, C, D, and B is going to be where they start the building. When you look at the building and you're facing it, that would be the gymnasium, the cafeteria kind of area, which is where they'll bring in steel. And they're starting to bring in material to the site. So we're making very good progress there. Shepherdstown Elementary, meanwhile, at the other end of the county, their pre-bid was held yesterday, and we had 7 general contractors who were present who want to make a bid on Shepherdstown Elementary. So I think that was a very good showing, and we look forward to getting their bids and moving on with that project. So hopefully the first meeting in August, I can bring to you bids, which I hope are very low and within budget, but we'll see what we get, and then we'll go from there. I do want to put in a plug this evening for recruitment. I want to invite everyone hearing my message tonight to continue to recruit or consider applying for positions in our school system. We have several wonderful opportunities available to qualified individuals in all areas. So people can check out our openings by visiting jcswv.org on the front page. If they click JCS Careers on the top right, interested persons can stop by 110 Morganton Avenue in Charlestown or give us a call at 304-725-9741. It's always exciting welcoming new staff members to our JCS family, so please consider application or spread the word about us. We'll be also having a job fair very early August. So I just want to plug that because this is the time of year where we're looking for qualified individuals to help us out in all areas. And lastly, here's my dovetail into instruction. Jefferson County Schools recognizes the direct relationship between attendance and student achievement and success. To promote regular attendance, Jefferson County Schools is emphasizing the importance of strong attendance throughout the school year. And this year, we're excited to announce we'll be celebrating attendance awareness during September and kicking off a new campaign. Our slogan will be Attendance Matters, all day, every day. Ms. Pearl attended some really good professional development and will be launching a dedicated attendance awareness campaign. We'll let our students, families, and our staff know that attendance does matter. We are creating materials for students to have the first day with an accompanying attendance video, which we are going to preview to you now. So for the very first time, thanks to the work and collaboration of Ms. Pearl and Mr. Hans Fogel, I'll get started with that video.
This is the number 9. It's probably not your first time seeing it. And I know that no matter how we dress it up, draw it, spell it out, or count it, it's still just a number. But there are some pretty amazing things about this little digit. In fact, 9 is one of the most significant numbers around. Like maybe you've been on cloud 9. Or maybe you remember when we used to have 9 planets. Or you could be one of those people who love to rock out to all 9 of Beethoven's symphonies. But that's not why 9 is such a big deal. 9 is a big deal because that is where success in the classroom begins. Did you know that there's a direct relationship between daily attendance and academic performance, graduation, even the development of good work habits? It's true. And students who miss 9 or fewer days of school each year have the best chance of succeeding in those areas. At Jefferson County Schools, we recognize that attendance is vital to student success, and we want to partner with you, our families, to ensure that students are attending school all day, every day, on time, and ready to learn, because attendance matters. You may not think that missing a few days of school is a big deal, but the absences add up quickly, and absenteeism in the first month of school can actually be a predictor of poor attendance throughout the school year. Did you know that half of students who miss 2 to 4 days in September go on to miss nearly a full month of school? And it starts early. Chronic absenteeism, which happens when a student misses 10% or more of the school year, is more common than you think. With only 180 days of school, a student only has to miss 18 days to become chronically absent. That's just 2 days a month. For our kindergartners, that much time away from school leads to lower academic achievement in the first grade. That same poor attendance influences whether a student can read proficiently by 3rd grade, and by 6th grade, chronic absences become the leading indicator that a student will drop out of high school. Now remember, time away from school for any reason is a loss of instructional opportunity and connectedness for students, but not all absences are created equal. Some absences are what we call excused absences. Excused absences are for reasons like illness and are communicated to the school using the tools provided. An unexcused absence is an absence for any reason that is not reported to your student's school. We know that you're busy and want to make sure it's easy to submit an absence when you need to. That's why we have a fully online form available on all of our school websites and on the JCSWV app for Android and iPhone. Simply access the form through the website or app, complete the form, and upload any doctor's notes or other important documentation. That's it. You'll also receive a phone call when a student misses school for any reason. That's why it's important that you keep your contact information, like your phone number and email, up to date. Attendance letters will be mailed home for students with 5 or more unexcused absences. That way we can let you know what's happening and give all of us an opportunity to discuss possible attendance barriers, then create an attendance plan for success for the remainder of the year. Remember, attendance matters all day, every day, and we want to partner with you to make students successful. To learn more about attendance at Jefferson County Schools, visit www.jcswv.org/attendance. Thank you, and have a great school year.
So we look so forward to welcoming students and staff back in August, and that is our first step toward raising awareness and supporting families to educate them a little bit and to work on eliminating chronic absence. If you don't have any questions of me, that completes my update. Thank you.
All right, next up we have the approval of the minutes, but before we do that, I would just like to take a moment and introduce our new person that will be taking our minutes. As we all know, Mrs. Janet Harner retired the end of June, and we are fortunate enough to have Miss Lisa White. So welcome very much to Jefferson County Schools. We're excited to have you, and hopefully you and Dr. Bishop will be a great team. So thank you very much for being here.
Voted against the agenda last time, and we couldn't be heard, I guess, on Zoom, but I voted against it.
That's reflected in the minutes. Give me just one moment here. does reflect, it says that Ms. Ogden, second by Mr. Osborne, and then vote taken, motion carried 4-1 with Donna Joy voting against. On page 3, right above unfinished business. It's at the end of the consent agenda. No, it's at the bottom. It has finance, and then it has vote taken, motion carried 4-1 with Donna Joy voting against. And then after that, it has unfinished business, none. It's at the top of page 3. You're welcome. All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes from June 26, 2023, say aye. Oppose? Thank you. Citizens' comments. First up is Ms. Bobby Block on Zoom, followed by Maya Brown. And just a reminder that speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and you're prohibited from making negative derogatory comments using a name or position by which an individual can be identified. Comments may not be threatening, profane, vulgar, or abusive, or the speaker will be required to cease his or her comments, please. Is Ms. Block there?
I'm not sure. Can you hear me? But I don't see me.
We can hear you, Ms. Block. If you want to go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good evening. The Jefferson County Board of Education needs to be proactive and participate in the development of the comprehensive plan. The Jefferson County Board, as an essential government entity, needs to express the vital role schools play in the health and growth of our community. And in turn, the community plan needs to reflect the importance of protecting human health, especially the children, the environment, and future generations, uniting together in the spirit of the Golden Rule and benefit those concerned, urging the BOE to reach out to the Planning Commission as soon as possible. Informal discussions, responding to surveys, as well as participating in formal testimony will be a way of highlighting collaboration and overcoming polarization and toxic pollution before it occurs. It'd be a wonderful way to welcome the new superintendent, creating mutually beneficial pathways for all parties, developing an overall oversight mode of operation, which can hopefully manifest in living and thriving in Jefferson County, West Virginia. As discussed in previous testimony, the West Virginia State Board of Education has clearly outlined regulations that create a safe zone relating to the location of public schools. Understanding the law does not regulate a city to follow them. However, the Board of Education can be a shining example. I am publicly going on record on behalf of the children, especially those that have asthma and special needs. They will be adversely affected by intense industrial development. Ransom, at minimum, is morally should be obliged to value the West Virginia Board of Regulation 6200 regulation. They should take it under advisement and comply with the due diligence that ensures positive action to protect the health and welfare of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Block. Next, we have Maya Brown. Mr. Vogel, can you make that mic hot, please? Thank you. There we go.
My name is Maya. Other members of the Black community and I have come and stood before you multiple times to make sure you are aware of the ongoing racism issue and unproportioned discipline issues within your schools. We have also met with your principals and Dr. Gibson Learn more times than I can count. We've worked over a year to assist Dr. Gibson Learn with coming up with a protocol and policy on how to, one, tackle the racial harassment on the Black students in your schools, and two, a culturally responsive way to handle each racial assault. That proposal was presented to you a couple of months ago and ultimately ended up in the hands of the Discipline Advisory Committee. Dr. Gibson Learn informed the parents of the Black students in our meetings that the Discipline Advisory Committee was formed by your principals and consists of all white people. She made it clear there are no minorities on this committee. According to the agenda, the Discipline Advisory Committee is prepared to show you their presentation on discipline tonight. I am here this evening to make sure the racial harassment protocol Dr. Gibson Learn submitted is included in this presentation, discussed among the board, and implemented in time so that your Black students can return to school next month, protected and supported. It is important that you remember that just because it does not directly or personally affect you, it does not mean it is not a real issue. Every single student, to include your Black students, deserve to have a safe and hostile-free learning environment, and it is your responsibility to make sure that happens. Welcome, Dr. Bishop. I've personally heard a lot of things about you, and I truly hope you are able to assist in this toxic and ongoing issue within Jefferson County Schools. We will reach out to you via email to offer our assistance and support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have the consent agenda. Mrs. Loring, are there any changes?
Number 38, please strike the word itinerant. 39, strike the word itinerant. 44, strike the word itinerant. And 45, strike the word itinerant. On the superintendent approval list, on line 14, line 17, line 18, line 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27, please strike the word itinerant. And those are the changes for this evening's consent agenda for HR.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion. Number 4, thanks. Can I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda minus or pulling number 3 from the consent agenda to be discussed in executive session?
Is there a second to approve the consent agenda, pulling number 3?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ogden, thank you, Ms. Bratton. Any discussion?
Yeah, what about items on the superintendent's list, items 9 through 12, 13, they all have itinerant too.
Correct, those are special education jobs. So the reason why itinerant was struck from the ones that I listed is because they're ECATs, which are not itinerant positions, but special education aides are itinerant.
My question is, were they advertised that way?
I do not have those 3 in front of me, but ESY is a special education program, and special education aides, especially personal care aides in West Virginia, are an itinerant status.
So they are aware of that?
I can't answer that question for you. I'm
Well,
not.
either, was it advertised, are they advertised, posted that way?
The jobs were posted. If you're asking me this evening if they were specifically posted with this specific title, I do not have the job posting in front of me in order to answer that question for you.
But the whole reason that I brought up this issue previously was because these jobs were not posted so that people knew they were itinerant.
You did not ask about these
I
positions?
didn't ask about these
Right,
specifically, but
correct.
in general.
Yeah, you
So-
didn't ask me about,
Okay.
you didn't ask us about these positions. You asked us about the ECAT
Correct,
positions.
but the whole point is that these jobs should be posted the way that people are to apply. When they are given a job, they shouldn't find out later that it's a different kind of job.
Right, nobody's disagreeing with you on that.
Okay.
And that wasn't the vein of the
Thank you.
conversation.
Amy, if we hire a person in a special ed position, can we legally hire them not as an itinerant? Or since in the state of West Virginia, they are itinerant because they're special ed ESY positions, that is the position. Is that correct?
Well, due to the nature of the special education, we're talking about aides here, that special education students, those needs can change, and they can change throughout the year. So in West Virginia, the aides tend to be itinerant by the scope of the position because they may need to be moved based on a student's status change, or their needs may change throughout the course. So we have that flexibility to utilize them as itinerant.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing number 3 for executive session, and with the edits to number 38, 39, 44, 45, and then the superintendent lists number 14, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Next, we have unfinished business. Action on approval of athletic training services. Welcome back, Mrs. White.
So Mr. Banks put out an RFP to procure athletic trainer services for Jefferson County Schools for Washington High School and for Jefferson High School. We had one person return a bid for those services. That is Athletico Physical Therapy, otherwise known as Pivot. Their bid was for a licensed athletic trainer at a cost per trainer of $43,400. We need a total of 2 licensed athletic trainers for a total of $86,800. CPR certification they can complete upon request at $45 a person. Additional services requested outside of the contract will be billed at $40 an hour. So we come before you this evening asking you to approve this request.
Is there a motion to approve Athletico Training Services, also known as Pivot Training Services, for the 23-24 school year and continuing to the end of the 26-27 school year for Jefferson and Washington High School?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pivot is the same company that we used for the last school year, who could not keep the contract because they didn't have the personnel. So this is the same company.
Correct.
So I would question, why would we go with the same company that already couldn't keep the contract?
And my only answer, not being in it deeply on that side, is that they are the company that applied that is stating they can keep a contract. I also see attached to this a West Virginia 96. And West Virginia 96 does afford us some protections as far as keeping the contract applied. So if you would award this company, I would presume that we would be able to have some legal ramifications if they cannot.
So are they the same legal ramifications that we would have had last school year when they could not?
Perhaps I'm just presenting, so I apologize for my lack of research on that this evening.
Okay, are we able to find this out to make sure that if we are going to have a contract with this company, that they are definitely able to keep up their side of the bargain and it not be like it was last school year?
So I have my administrative assistant sitting here. I'm going to field the question to her for a moment.
Oh, ma'am, if you would come to the,
Yes.
And
Mrs. Laura Carter.
So this year, they billed us for the hours that they attended either Jefferson or Washington, on both. And so typically, the Washington bill came in very low because of the struggle with the hours. So we didn't pay the full amount. We just paid for the services that they could offer when they offered.
Okay, and I understand that, but it still left us without the proper staff at games that our children needed because they couldn't keep their end of the bargain, their contract. So that really bothers me.
So another concern that I have just with that is that we're kind of sitting on top of football season, and I'm happy to relay this to Mr. Banks and work on this for you, but in the meantime, my recommendation would not be to go uncovered, because some is better than nothing until we can see how they're going to keep the contract. Again, the West Virginia 96 allows us to cancel the agreement on our end if obligations are not being met, but being as this is the only vendor that has come forth, my recommendation would be to go ahead and accept that, and let's work with Pivot on getting full services or procuring another company that can do so. But that's going to take time, and in the meanwhile, I don't want our football players and other athletes going without no services at all. So I'll leave that to the discretion of the board.
Did anybody else bid on this?
No, that's what I'm saying, is that this is the only bidder. And since Dr. Bishop was off mic, he'll follow up. He said he will follow up with the company as well.
And remind me, I believe it was just to this last year that we had the issue. I mean, up until then, we had consistent service from them as they have bid over the years. And
as my memory serves, yes, but again, that's Mr. Banks's area, so.
Okay,
I will follow up with Mr. Banks as well.
appreciate it.
Yes.
And can you just tell me two things? Number one, do we know if that is an increase or a decrease in what was proposed to us last year as far as a bid? Do we know?
I do not.
Okay, you can just let me know. I'm just curious.
I think it's within a couple of $100 of difference.
Okay, I thought it looked familiar, but I wasn't sure. Thank you so much. And then also,
It's a
I'm
couple
assuming
of
because I noticed it was extra $40 per hour, hours outside the contract. So I'm assuming we're just keeping some documentation on that so we can follow that data to find out do we have any kind of statistics on how many extra hours that we need them, or any of those kinds of things, so we can make some different decisions on a contract going forward.
This year, every time the invoices came in, I pushed them to the athletic directors to confirm with me that the hours that we were billed for were the hours that they saw the athletic directors. So I left it, they were the ones that were tracking it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Is it possible to create a contract where they're penalized each time they don't fulfill their obligation? That might be an incentive, because if they are contracted out to other organizations and, you know, it's so easy to just disregard our schools, maybe there would be some motivation if there was some sort of a penalty.
Thank you, I appreciate that feedback. In the current request for proposal that went out, that does not reflect that in the language of the document.
I'm sorry, you said it's in there?
It does not reflect it in the
Does
language
not.
of this particular document, yeah.
Oh, so you can't go back after?
Not once you put out a request for proposal, it would have to be rebid. So, you know, as you know, your choices this evening are to accept the proposal or go out for bid again.
And how much effort does that take to go out for a bid again?
We have to advertise in local papers for 2 consecutive weeks. They have to have time to respond to the request for proposal. Typically, that will be another 2 weeks, and then to get on a board agenda can sometimes take 2 weeks. So we're probably looking at 6 weeks total.
And you don't have time because of football season, correct?
We have all the time in the world. It's just I have concern for the athletes at this point.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So when does football season start? Does it start within the next 6 weeks?
Yeah, I believe it starts August 1st.
I know
they typically
practices-
start
practices do, but I'm
Right.
saying, when does the season start?
I'm thinking the 3rd week in August roughly is when it starts. 3rd,
But
4th,
the-
later.
The athletic trainers are there for practice as well. I
Oh,
mean, it's not
okay.
just for the games, so it.
Yeah, but if
They're
they're
there,
not
okay.
there though, Ms. Skinner, then, because contractually last year, they weren't. So that's my whole point, that if they're not going to be there, then if we were to put it back out, and we could probably expedite the process some kind of way, couldn't we?
No. I mean, I'm
No.
thinking 2 things. I mean, legally, no, a bid is a bid. You have to put it out, and you have to follow the parameters. Number 2, I feel as though, you know, we can go by what has happened, yes, but at this point, we've put it out. We've had one company come forward to say that they are going to bid. They bid. This is the only company that bid. We need to give them an opportunity
Right, but
to
at the
see if they
same
will
time-
follow this year to adhere to the contract. Sounds like we have an opportunity. If they don't fulfill the contract, you know, something that we can, you know, go back and ask the questions about and maybe follow up with doing something we need to. But at this point, I mean, I don't feel comfortable whether it's soccer or football or any fall sport that is already occurring with practices right now to be uncovered without having some kind of a certified trainer on staff at the school. So if we did decide to do that and we went back out, we could spend the next 4 to 6 weeks hoping and still have nobody else bid. Then where are we? Because if I was them, I'd be like, sorry about your luck. I'm not going to help you out. So then we have no one. So, I
We do
mean-
make efforts to reach out to companies to ask for bids. We cannot obviously force them to make a bid, but we make efforts to do so when we put bids out.
and I feel like they have a decent track record up until this last year of providing us services. I know we had an issue with Washington, but as far as I know, Jefferson has been very happy and has had the same consistent person. So, you know, I'm not sure what the mitigating factors are with that staffing issue, but we've also had issues, you know, with other staff. So hopefully we can dig into that as well and find out what we need.
All right, so the motion on the table right now is approving Athletic Go training services and Pivot training services for the 23-24 school year and continuing to the end of 26-27. All in favor, say aye.
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 Oppose?
Opposed.
All right.
All right,
ma'am.
thank you.
All right, new business, we have none. Next, we have an advisory committee report from the Discipline Advisory Committee. And welcome.
Well, hello, thank you. It's my first time to stand in front of the school board. I know I'd like to start off, my name is Mary Margaret Reagan. I am a kindergarten teacher at Blue Ridge Elementary. And in my 30 years, I'd like to welcome Dr. Bishop, thank you, to our county. I'm starting us off with our discipline committee. I'd like to, do we have our PowerPoint ready to go? Okay, I'd like to start off with, go ahead to the next slide, please. Just to start off, like, who were we? We started off as a committee that was, and emails were put out to say, or on the website to say, hey, anyone who would be interested in being on the committee could express interest. We started off with a committee of, say, 25 or 30 maybe. On that first day, we ended up dwindling down consistently to our last 7 members that stayed with it through the whole process. And of this group, 5 are teachers with 10 or more years of experience. 3 of us happen to be elementary teachers. 3 are secondary teachers. 1 is a special education teacher. 5 of us are parents. And 1 of us is also a current member of the Culture, Unity, and Equity Committee. We wanted to really start off by saying that our recommendations are not intended to target any Jefferson County Schools Central Office staff, administrators, teachers, parents, or students as causes of the problem. The problem is systematic in nature that we have talked about. Our task that we were given was describing what effective discipline looks like. We were then to decide on a focus problem, brainstorm causes of the problem, and then decide which causes are within our local control. Our next slide. So after we battled it back and forth with our committee of lots of different opinions from high school down to, like I say, kindergarten, we agreed that effective discipline looks like this. Effective discipline is a mechanism to teach students appropriate behaviors and to hold them accountable for their own behavior. The next slide. So then the problem and the causes. Our focus problem, which we all agreed on at all levels, chronically disruptive classroom behavior creates an unsafe and disruptive learning environment for students and teachers. The causes of the problem that we felt were the most important were systematic inconsistency in following the state policy that's already in place, lowered expectations, which we'll explain later, and lack of support for staff and faculty.
Hi, guys. So my name is Jean Yerrick. I currently taught at North Jefferson, and I taught in the upper elementary. And so we're going to start with inconsistencies. So as we met as a team, I'm going to be honest and tell you that this was more than we had entailed or thought. But I also want to say that we really saw that even just us talking amongst county and even parents and even community members, it really is just an inconsistency. What was at my school wasn't at somebody else's. So we dove into the fact that we feel like there is an inconsistent upper level. When it is taken down to us as teachers, we felt like we didn't know. And so as we read 4373, it cleared a lot of fog, for lack of a better word. So we don't believe that we need a new policy. We believe we need to execute the current one that is here. Implementation isn't effective in our teaching systems. So I'm going to go on to the next slide, and I'm going to say to you that there are level 1, level 2, and level 3 behaviors that are not executing the proper consequence for the actions. So what we found was that the state policy addresses these. So why are we recreating something that's already there? Why are we putting time and energy into concepts that are right in front of us? So we need to teach and educate, and then consistently, we didn't like the word discipline. We think it is old school. When we think discipline, let's think about it. What do you think of discipline? You think of your parents, and a lot of times that we joke here, switch, go find your switch. No, that's not what we mean. We need a consequence for their action. So the consequences are listed, and I'm going to read to you really quickly from the new House bill, the 2890. Excluded students may be admitted to classrooms when principals provide written certification to the teachers that the student may be readmitted and specifies the type of disciplinary action. So what was the consequence? So you're sending us these kids back that have had these outbursts or whatever the situation, but oftentimes there's no communication. So how do we continue to change a behavior that we don't know what the action was for the behavior or the consequence? And each county board shall implement a tiered system policy to provide a framework for the student's behavior and punishment. It's in 4373. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but it is. And if you could next slide for me, please, thank you. So I'm not gonna read this to you. I'm going to say that this is a level 1. So level 1 would be cheating. It would be things like deceit. It would be inappropriate language. It would be comments towards other students and staff. It would be walking down the hall and they just made some derogatory comment. Those are things that cell phone use. It's a standing issue, but they're things that need a teacher level consequence, whether it be a referral or whether it be in elementary school recess. That's something that we do. Next, level 2s are more about gang violence. They're more about slander or a persecution of other staff members, whether it be race or ethnicity, whatever the situation. But that's where we hit the bare bones, and that's where we need to execute the consequences and prove that they are being held accountable for those actions. In my classroom, one of the first things I do the first week of school is teach my students what insubordination is. And the reason I do that is because then by week 3, I say, and they're gonna go, that's insubordination, I'm sorry. But they've learned that the consequence for the action, and most of the time, I don't write up my kids because they know that they're gonna be held accountable. In a lot of our classrooms, what we're seeing is there's no accountability. If there's no accountability, think about it. If you happen to go out here to this light and you speed through it and you get through it and you don't get pulled over, what are you gonna do the next time you get to the light? Chances are you're gonna try to speed through it again until you get caught and they write you a ticket and then you're done. So it's the same thing in our classrooms. We have to start teaching children consequences for actions. So if you use a derogatory comment, there's a consequence for that. When I was here in number talks with you guys, and I talked about my dad and his multiplication facts. I'm gonna go back to that. It's the same thing for behavior. You know, my dad used to take my brother into the bathroom. I don't know what happened, but what I know is that when he came out, he wasn't happy. So I didn't push that button. It's the same kind of thing. We don't need to hurt our children. We need to teach them that when they misbehave, there's a consequence, whether it's a written consequence, whether it's lunch detention, whatever the consequence. And there's clearly stated, if we can go on to the next, because there should be one more. Nope, it's the last one. I thought there was one more, but there are clear levels, and they're in 4373. So rather than read it to you, I would hope that you would look into that part of the tiered system and not try to recreate what is already there for 4373. I'm going to give it to Cagney, and he's going to talk about lowered expectations, and then at the end we will address all the questions.
Hello, my name is Cagney Helmick. I am currently at Jefferson High School. I'm a special ed teacher, and for the causes that the next cause that I'm going to be talking about is lower expectations. When it comes to academics, we we have lost the priority of education. And due to the pandemic, we go through it. We have new responsibilities that goes beyond just teaching, and all those things is great. That we need to look at the student as a whole person. That's absolutely, we need to do that. But we have lost the priority that our main priority is to teach and make people accountable, that when they're in school, they're here to learn. When it comes to it also, it's all about consequences for people, students' behaviors. There's too many warnings that's happening in our classrooms. I think of it when it comes to tardies, especially in the secondary level. They come in my classroom and they're tardy. They normally have 3 tardies before I can do anything, and then they go to other classes and they're tardy in that class. And it becomes this thing of they are constantly doing inappropriate behavior before we even get a chance to do anything about it. But that's only one example. But there's warnings is all over the place where we need to do a better job at teaching people the appropriate manner so that they understand the expectations, they understand the standards, so that we can get them, get students to do things in the correct manner for the long run. And also the last thing is on this slide, modern perspectives has it that they interpret discipline as being harmful. Yeah, it's uncomfortable sometimes discipline students. But when somebody does something wrong, it's not supposed to be good. They're not supposed to feel good about doing something inappropriately. But that doesn't mean that they're bad people. We need to understand that we are trying to make it them known that what they're doing is bad. They're not bad. And it's not supposed to be harmful at all. But because discipline nowadays is becoming too casual, that we are too much into being tolerant of what they're doing. And that sets that it's okay to do unacceptable behavior. And we need to put a foot down and say, no, it's not acceptable. We're not going to take that. But it takes that we need to have those consequences to let them know what do we expect, but we also need to make sure that we build rapport with our students so that they know, oh, what I did was bad, but I'm not bad. I can come back from this and be a better person so that we can move on from this. Okay. Recommendations that we have is systematically, Jefferson County, we must recognize that academics is the primary function of our schools. That is the business of education, is to learn and to teach. And learn to teach from academics as well as behavior. Students who consistently struggle to make positive behavior, we need to come up with a plan where we have alternative settings for those students. And we recommend that would be a good place for SOMO and some other organizations, that if they are having issues of some kind, that they can get those accommodations in that space, that SOMO could have a headquarters in those alternative settings. All right. Thirdly, staff must recognize, and I would even say that everyone, from parents to students, needs to recognize that discipline, sometimes it's uncomfortable. We can't cut it any more than that. It's going to be uncomfortable sometimes because, again, if they're doing something they're not supposed to, they're not supposed to feel good about it. They did something wrong. But that does, like I said, it doesn't mean that they're bad. their behavior is bad. There's a difference. We need to recognize that. And we need to provide a space that is productive and positive, and for most part, promote student success in society, not for the short term, but for the long term. We want good citizens. We want people, we want to teach people how to become better citizens, and that it's all about the long term. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michael Janey. I'm the English teacher at Jefferson High School. I'm here to talk about the identified problem of lack of support of staff and faculty. So our first task when we put our committee together was to read policy 4373, and it was a learning opportunity for us, and I think that was one of our big takeaways is that employees lack a solid understanding of that policy, including rights and responsibilities. The second issue that we brought forth was that some chronic staffing shortages contribute to subpar execution of discipline. We've got a lot of long-term subs in the buildings, and they don't have that background to, have some effective discipline. And then oftentimes the conversation about discipline happens at the beginning of the year, and we don't get a chance to catch up or even talk about discipline scenarios with administrators. Oftentimes that can be tough because you have to speak and honestly and do scenario-based, but we thought that a little more of that could be helpful. Next slide, please. So our recommendations would be to have some specific, consistent yearly training on policy 4373 for staff every year as part of professional development, something to do at the beginning of the year so that we all understand, hey, what are we supposed to do according to state policy? Second recommendation is to consider restructuring professional staff to fill more permanent teacher positions. Nothing is better than someone who's got that experience in working with discipline in the classroom. And then third is to encourage school leadership committees. And most schools have this leadership committee, which is composed of, in high schools, like department chairs. Elementary schools, they might have team leaders for particular grade levels, to have some conversations about how discipline works, and even when it doesn't work, or in situations where they couldn't, follow the chain of command or the chain of consequences, and the reasons why, so we understand the, totality of the issue or what happens there. All right, thank you.
You get me again, I'm sorry. So, summary. But before I go to summary, I was sitting back here flipping through 4373. If you've never read it, it's great to read. It really is. It's very long and tedious. You should break it. You should jigsaw it. You should do it together. It's way better. But I wanted to take a step back for a second because I did not do justice for the levels, and it's because it's so much for us to cover in such a short period of time. The level 1 says it's minimal disruptive behaviors. So that would be like the normal everyday, like talking out of place, for lack of a better definition. Level 2, is disruptive and potential harmful behaviors that disrupt the educational process. And I think that's what we have to focus on. These are, discipline is not fun for anyone involved. Let's be honest with ourselves. As parents, as teachers. But I tell my students that I love them enough to tell them when they're wrong. And where has that gone out of education? Why is it not that we correct in love versus to correct behaviors? Level 3 is severely disruptive, imminent danger, illegal or aggressive behavior are willfully committed and known to be illegal and harmful to other people and property. And it has more details. I'm just giving you the brief because, again, we're all capable of reading. And level 4s. And level 4 behaviors, to me, are expulsion. They're putting them in a different setting. It has to do with the Safe Schools Act behaviors. So these are battery on school employees. And I know this year that was a problem. They are felonies, illegal substances, possessions of weapons, and danger to other people. Level 3 covers what we're talking about when it comes to racism and ethnic negativities and I harassment. Thank you. Sorry, I don't know why I couldn't come up with that. So I'm going to go back to and summarize. I just wanted to cover that because I think it's important that you guys have those. So everyone take a deep breath. We want this to be productive, and the only way it works is if we realize it has to be in love. Like, we have to teach our kids better. And, you know, as I sat on this committee week after week and would go home and would cry, and the reason I would cry is not because I was mad, actually, it was because I felt like I let down the system. And when you have teachers that seriously care about their kids, then they tear themselves up way worse than anybody else is going to. But I also could bring in my parents, and my parents of my students would tell you that I did love my kids, and they learned how to correct those behaviors. So, disciplining level 1 and 2 at a school level, but with communication to the admin. I'm going to go across from left to right and then up and down, just so everyone can follow along. Referring to the existing policies. Why fix a wheel that isn't broken? Why not make the wheel that's working work? Discipline needs to be consistent across the county. You know, I had a kid come to me in January, and he got up and he was being disruptive, bottom line. I said to him, I pulled him aside when my kids went to special, and I said, what's the deal? And he goes, in my old school, I got away with it. And I was like, you're not in your old school, and I love you enough to tell you that's not how we act in this classroom. And he stopped. He said, you know, nobody ever told me it wasn't okay. There's a problem. Academics is our primary business of education. Yes, we have to learn to manage behaviors and teach kids how to interact with each other, but we need to do that in a manner where they're learning. So when we have one kid that is causing an unsafe environment, nobody's learning. Hate to go to Maslow, but good old-fashioned Maslow, if we're not meeting safety and security, we're not teaching anyone anything. Struggling students need alternative settings with individualized support. Lots of schools have these. Lots of counties have these. And I know it becomes like a managerial, financial mess, but we have these already. In North, we have a BD classroom. Why are we not using them to their full potential? Staff must realize that discipline may not be comfortable, but it's not harmful. Correction is love. Conduct consistent yearly training on Policy 4373, which it says, because I verified that too while I was sitting there, every year it's supposed to be 4 hours of training, and you're supposed to renew with 2. I've been here 3 years. I can honestly say I'm not sure I've had any of that, other than what I did on this committee, which I'm grateful for. Reconstruct professional staff to fill teachers' positions. And if we are not capable of putting teachers in positions and we have to hire long-term subs, then we need to do a better job of educating them as well. If we have to put a long-term sub in, because we all know where we are with teacher shortages, they're flocking, then we need to do a better job of training. And encourage school leadership committees to facilitate conversations about discipline. It needs to be consistent across the schools. I shouldn't have a kid come to me in January and say, well, in my old school, that was how I acted and it was okay. No, it wasn't. It's just a lot of times teachers don't feel like they're supported by their admin, so they wash their hands instead of fighting the battles. I like fighting battles. It's kind of like my MO. Next slide, please. So, Policy 4373 is not the problem. The problem is in our execution. So, I invite you guys to read 4373. It's a lot. It took us weeks of reading and conversations and bouncing it back and forth. But it really does have everything we need. So let's use it. Yes, ma'am.
So thank you for your presentation. However, the board heard a presentation by Dr. Gibson, which our parents in the community, our black parents, sat down with her and came up with the policy. We didn't send the policy to you to determine if we should use the policy, because we've already determined that it should come to you for the discipline in the policy. So my question to you would be, where's the policy, where's the discipline? And we already know about 4373 because you've said it over and over and over, but that apparently does not cover everything, because if it did, then our parents in the community would not have sat down for over a year, or at least a year, with the superintendent that left to make the policy.
So we didn't, because it wasn't given to us at first. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It came to us in June.
Right, the board sent it to you. So
Right,
we sent it
right.
to you
So
to add. So if you decided that you don't want to do it, then you should send it back to us so that we can discuss it amongst each other to determine what we'll do about the discipline and the policy that our parents came up with and we all agree with.
I'm not going to disagree with the fact that you sent us a policy. We read it, and we don't disagree with the policy, but where we are is that we were tasked originally with discipline, and then that was sent to us in addition. And although we're super into it with trying to fix it, there was just more than 6 of us could have managed. So my recommendation would be...
The policy's already written. All we asked you to do was the discipline. So it's already written, so we didn't ask you to write a policy or anything like that. All we asked you to do was step in on the discipline part of the policy. And I'm sure, you know, if you didn't want to step in on it, then that's fine. Then you should have came back to the board to just let us know. That's all I'm saying, because the parents in our audience, they put a lot into, you know, writing this policy and sitting down with the superintendent over and over and over throughout the year to make that happen, and to just push it to the side and say, we decided not to do the discipline.
I don't think we pushed it to the side. I think our goal when we formed the committee was to address the problems of discipline for Jefferson County schools. And then that was what our goal changed. We feel like that we could not meet the goal once it
Let me just
changed.
explain something to you, that the racial policy is a discipline problem within Jefferson County schools. So that's why it was given to you, because it's a huge problem. It's probably bigger than any problem that we have, because we have students leaving the county because of this. We have teachers, we have, you know, we have, like I said, we have parents in the audience who have taken time out a whole year to do this. So
I would like to speak to that because I completely understand, you know, what you're saying. And I think that where we were coming from with the committee was that, you know, we know that there are so many behaviors that are not being addressed. And the racial problems are a huge one. And I think what we felt like was that within the policy, if it was actually followed, there shouldn't be having near as many of those problems. Does that make sense, what we're saying? So we were given the racial slurs, but when we really looked at all of what was the policy, we're thinking, you know, we're not following through with any of the discipline for when these things happen. I mean, we hear the horror stories about how children are, you know, racially or even, you know, ethnicity, you know, are being singled out. And you're like, but then the first thing I hear is, well, what was done about it? And that is the biggest frustration. And we are saying that the policy is in place. We're not following these laws. And really, it's off of Jefferson County. One of the nice things about it is it's not the school board's responsibility necessarily, because you know what? It's the state. The state has put this out, and we are not following it. Like I said, I'd never seen what was in. And I'm a pretty good disciplinarian in my classroom. But I'm here to tell you, we're losing teachers as well as students. But this is why we've got such a teacher shortage. And it's not just Jefferson County. It's not just the state of West Virginia. I mean, I literally had friends in from the Netherlands that said, oh yeah, we call them the COVID kids. They're out of control. What? I mean, we're talking other countries. So it is a systematic that we have lowered these expectations. And you're right, these racial slurs are inappropriate. They should not be. And when you look at some of the things in, like, say, the policy, we really felt like we have to be more consistent. Here are the laws in place. Here's what the consequences are. These principals need to follow them, period. And it should never happen. You're right.
I agree with you 100%, but I still say that that policy was put into place because 4373 is not working for our children of color, our black children and other children of color. So that's why it was put in place. That's why they sat down with the superintendent. So
well, and
I just ask that, I don't know if you can go back or, I don't know, but I just ask the board.
I know in my kindergarten classroom, I would say that 4373 has failed my students as well. It's failed me as a teacher.
It wasn't your job to create the policy, I believe. And this task was dropped on you for, we won't go there, reasons. You did a wonderful presentation. I completely agree with you 100%. As a teacher in Jefferson County, it was long before COVID. It's been dwindling for years. And from my perspective, when the state code, the state scorecard gives you points or, you know, a letter, if you exaggerate, boost graduation rates, and if you can increase attendance, increase achievement, and lower discipline. So for many years, and I don't know if it's still happening because I haven't been in the classroom, but when I was in the classroom, these students were pushed through and they did not deserve to graduate because they didn't even show up. So that, from my perspective, was done to boost those numbers. And that's where we are from my perspective. It is coming from policies that the state has created. That's one thing. I completely agree that administration does not generally follow through equally. And I mean, as a teacher in Jefferson County, it's hit or miss, you know? It depends which administrator you get, and it depends which child. Well, you know, if that person knows that child's parent, well, you can forget it. And I have never, ever gotten a response as to any kind of discipline that was administered to a child, no matter what they did. You just never hear about it. So, and to just follow what we have, I mean, wouldn't that be something? To just follow policies that we have. And I completely understand and agree. And in addition, like I said, I don't believe it's your job to create the policy. That was not what your job was, or you know, that's you just were looking into the issues in the county. And you did mention that I think that the bullying and racial slurs are mentioned in that policy, so they're already there. It could be that the other people that dealt with it weren't even aware of the policy. I don't know, but
they're well aware of the policy, Dr. Joy. I'm sorry to cut you off, but they made the policy, so they didn't ask them to do the policy. We asked them as the board to do the.
They're just giving us what they found and what they're advising.
And we appreciate that.
It's up to the board to create the policy, really.
The policy was created, Dr.
Yeah, but that's limited. It only covers a few things. There is an extensive policy that it covers all the tiers and it follows the state code. Whatever the previous superintendent created may or may not be comprehensive enough, and it may not follow the state code. So it's the board's job, I believe, to create a policy. Now, I completely believe that we do not follow the policy. Just from my experience, the racial slurs, my children experience them. So I know that it happens. Anyway, I appreciate all the work that you put into it, and I hope that this board will take that into consideration. And, you know, we have a new administration, and so we'll have to have his input too. You know, he has a lot more experience. So I think that would be helpful.
And real quick, I don't want you to think for 1 second we didn't think in depth. We really did. The problem was we were given a task in January and we were given a new task in May. And as a advisory committee, we decided that we can only address what was originally given to us. Our responsibilities cannot be changed at the last minute and then expected us to start all over. And that's kind of how we felt when we got the email and all of the policies, because at the last minute, and we were told that it needed to be by July 1st. So, I mean, we're already 2 weeks into July, and so we're sorry that we couldn't.
So you received more than one policy?
We did. 23. Yeah. We received the House bill, the policy you sent us, and a 2 approximately page request of what was changed of what we were asked originally. Safe Schools Act. So it's not that we didn't. We felt like we were literally a moving target, and so we as a committee decided that we had to start where we were asked initially. You don't normally sign a contract for a job and then change it. I mean, other than the duties assigned at the bottom of the contract. So we all felt.
Thank you.
So we're sorry that we didn't, but we also.
Thank you for what you did, because I didn't realize that, but it's like Dr. Joyce said, we do have our new administration. Dr. Chuck is here, so maybe the parents can get a meeting and discuss it with Dr. Chuck.
I mean, the advisory committees were created to give advice, and I think you did a wonderful job, and I think the racial issues are separate, but they do need to be, you know, we do need to follow through on discipline. I mean, I can tell you horror stories of the racial instances that I observed, reported, and nothing was ever done. So I know that it happens, but the idea of holding people accountable, I think that that's what Dr. Bishop's agenda is. So I've heard.
And I will say, this past, several weeks ago, I was a counselor at 4-H camp, and it was an older camp, and then I was one of the instructors for a Let's Talk class, and one of the campers could pick their topics, and we just pulled them out of the hat where they came up with things, and one of them was school behavior, and it was our last day, and I tell you, it almost brought me to tears. Because now we had students from Jefferson, Berkeley, and Morgan counties, and they were all, we had them from all different ages, from 15 to 21. Every single one of those children in that class, or one of those campers in this class, said that they did not feel safe in their school. And it hit me hard, but every single one of them. Then you hear horror stories, and it's, like I said, it's Berkeley County schools. We heard Morgan County, and it's just like, so when we say that this is a systematic problem, that the behaviors are we're too easy, and it's unacceptable, and we have to teach what the expectations are. One of the things that we said in the committee was that, we have children from split, homes. And they know when they go to dad's house, they can behave a certain way. But then they know when they come back to mom's house, they have to behave a certain way. And they can flip that switch. You know what? When I come to my job, whatever my issues are at home, I have to check them at the door. Because when I come in to teach, you don't want to hear about my mental health issues. Right? So you know what? I have to put it aside. and I have to behave a certain way in a classroom. And that's what we're saying that needs to happen with our students. And I would like to think that a lot of these racial issues could be checked at the door. Whatever is going on in your home, you know what? You check it at the door. This is the expectations for Jefferson County schools. You know, one of the things that I've been preaching is here. Have parents sign it. Here's our behavior plan. Here's our policy in place. You need to sign this along with the other 30 copies of signatures that we have to do, because this is what we are going to expect of your child. If you choose not to have your child in Jefferson County schools, we have some wonderful opportunities, like Jefferson Virtual Academy. We have homeschool options, because you know something? We have to stop torturing our good children that are in these schools, because they are not feeling safe. So I guess when we come up with our, I'm about as loving as you can get. You don't stay in kindergarten for 29 years and not be, well, a little crazy along with that, but being very loving and patient. But enough is enough. And we have to stop the behaviors and teach. Here's what we expect. If you don't, here are these consequences. You have to be held accountable for your actions, because each one of you are, each one of us on our job, we're held accountable for our actions. And that's all we're asking of our children when they go out, go to school. And then so hopefully everyone can feel safe.
So let me just, if it's okay, kind of reflect back what I've heard you guys say and then see if we can kind of come to some consensus. First of all, yes, thank you guys for taking the time, because it was a long time for sure to be a part of something. And obviously you cared enough about it to see it to the very end, which obviously, as you said, we lost several people who, for whatever reason, did not. So I would say this. It sounds like what I'm hearing you say is everybody needs to be educated on this policy. When I was looking through, just so I could see it a little bit closer, the different levels of policy that are there, and then it does give examples of those options. And then it gives you options, from what I remember, because I think just the training we just went to briefly touched on this this year. So that being the case, there are specific examples of what you would do. So we need to, in my opinion, overlay the policy that was created by our family members and our community members who obviously have experienced a lot of racial disparity for different reasons. And it needs to be overlaid into those, if this happens, and be a little bit more specific in that verbiage. Because yes, it says vulgar language. Well, that's not specific to say, a racial slur or whatever, that we want that in there. And we've made it clear that those things are important to us as a school system, so they need to be laid in there. Then we need those consequences to be very clear and what levels those things fall into. Then I also feel like we need to be more forward-thinking and an action item of what are we going to do with the students that are disruptive, whether it's at the elementary, whether it's at the middle, and whether it's at the high school. So if they are, do we have an opportunity, if they are pulled from that classroom, such as, here every day, this is a study hall room, but Apex is offered there. If you're pulled out of an English class, or a math class, or any of your 4 content areas, whatever your thing you were learning on that day, guess what? You're going to sit in here and you're going to do it on the computer all day, because you didn't get it over here, but you have to have the instruction. So I don't know if that's a possibility, but instructional-wise, we also need to make sure kids are not losing content. And if you don't earn the privilege of being with the rest of the students, then you're going to still do it, and this is your consequence. We also need to then track those pieces that every single admin at every single building and every single teacher, number 1, gets reported back as to what happened as far as the consequence. Number 2, all those consequences are tracked so that we can decide, because some staff are going to use what works, what they remember from the list, what they've experienced themselves, what they like best, regardless of data. But if we track those, we will have very specific data every month that we had this many white students, this many black and brown students, this many whatever, and these were the consequences that they had. How come these are showing up differently, right? Because we need that clear data to be able to about face not next year, next month, right? So the only way we're going to get that is we're clearly tracking that data. And because I think I heard overall, it's consistency, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school. It is about consistency. So if you have this or this offense, this is the consequence, and it must be this consequence. And then the parents, this is what happens, the students know this is what happened, the teachers know this is what happens, the administration knows this is what happens, and everyone's held accountable for the same play, where right now we are not. And I agree with you 100%, whether it's a teacher or a building or whatever, it is not the same. So, and I also agree with you that yes, that policy is, it's very haphazard, it's not necessarily being followed. And I think it's not anybody's fault. There was no ill intent there. They're just not, as you said, not educated on it. I don't even think they knew that, well, here's the line. This is what we need to follow. So being able to pull in the piece that we feel is important and make sure that it is outlined and it is included, I think is going to take some working with the groups to be able to make that happen and make sure that that happens, and then outlining that to be able to bring something to the board to say, here's the policy that we've come up with, this is what we'd like the board to look at so we can move forward for this school year. Is that fair?
I know I'm stepping outside of the committee, we didn't discuss this, but I mean, I know the 4373 was passed or filed 2019. Well, we all know what 2019 was starting, so no wonder it's a whirlwind of what? What is that? I mean, like I said, I'm pretty good on discipline, and I was like, oh, it's there. Why aren't we following it? So, but one of the things that I've just, like I said, being a lifelong resident, and a lifelong commitment to Jefferson County Schools was, and I know I'm asking, it would be stepping on my soapbox, but I'm thinking, we have a SOMO department. What a shame we don't have a discipline department. That would be a consistency that the discipline, so those principals could have a backup that discipline committee is going to say, okay, now we're going to your school, what are these issues, to make sure that everything is being handled so it's not, oh, one principal is playing a favoritism, or maybe at Jefferson or at Washington High School we have ISS, but we don't have that at Jefferson High School. So that's not fair. So a consistency, with the discipline maybe committee, I know you don't need any new positions, but you know what I'm saying? But it's so important. And I just feel like it's a huge issue, and like I said, across the world, that the behaviors are just, we've got to do something to help our children because we're not doing them a service.
I think you're right, too, at that elementary level, they don't, especially the ones that don't have an assistant principal, so they can spend all day just doing discipline.
They do.
Yes, which means
as a
they're
teacher,
not
I have
getting
a
anything
notebook.
else done.
I have a notebook this thick on documentation for one child. One child. Did I get help? No. You know what I mean? But one child, the time it takes, no wonder I'm like, this year I was like, I'm done, I can't do it. I got to check out. I'm looking for, other positions. And I'm thinking, when I'm saying that, there's something, because it's just, I'm defeated. It's like, why? I'm wasting countless hours taking documentation. It's taking time away from my students to have to document because it's literally every 3 minutes for somebody. We can't do it. I'm a teacher. I'm not a mental health professional. And I'm just one of the system. I could probably hear spontaneous cheering going on, if people watch this video, like, yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Because I talk to my coworkers, and it's the same across the board in other counties. Like I said, it's not just us. It's not our failure. It's just It's just a systematic failure for our children.
I think that you make a good point about the SOMO department, because the way that we used to handle discipline here, if a child had a discipline issue, the child was then referred to the counselor to talk about, what was the motivation for that, and to start dealing with the root cause of it. So I think it's a wonderful idea to have the SOMO department involved. I was going to say that the racial harassment and violence is covered in level 3. And also, we do collect data, and with the new, this year's policies, the legislators passed, it'll be more of teacher involvement where the teachers can actually document, because we've seen what has happened when administrators are in charge of documenting. If their motivation is to keep the numbers down so that they can get an A on their report card, well, then they're going to be a little bit more choosy with what they decide to consider discipline. So I think that it's important that, and it's nice that you all are willing to contribute. I think Dr. Bishop has a lot of expertise, and we have these new policies from the state that we need to incorporate. But the bottom line is accountability and following through, and that's going to be our administrator and Dr. Bishop's job.
Well, and I just want to say this, I want to be careful to say that I do think obviously there are reasons why you would or would not document, but the same overwhelming feeling that the teachers are feeling, and I know it's like, oh good, I get a chance to document. Oh good, one more chance to document and not teach, right? So while I appreciate that they're giving the opportunity, it's the same thing I think the principals feel, right? They're running throughout their buildings. They don't have time. That's the furthest down the list possible. Not that they ill-intentionally do not want to do it. I do think that, there are other reasons for that. But again, that's another piece that we need to look at, right? How can we make this streamlined and easy, that we get the documentation we want and need, but it doesn't come at a cost to the classroom or to the administration.
But I also believe that it's an opportunity for teachers to have that conversation with administration, that we can collaborate and not have it just one-sided, and that, oh, you deal with it, it's out of my hands, that we can actually have a conversation where we it's kind of help each other out instead of having it, oh, I dealt with it. Dealt with it how exactly? That we're actually doing it together instead of making it, oh, you deal with the problem, I've already dealt with it, the person's not in my classroom, or I'm dealing with it only in my classroom. We're actually having that conversation with the administration as well as the student so that we put that accountability on everyone and they're responsible for, the responsibility for behaviors isn't just one person, it's everybody. Just like we were talking about, everyone is the issue, but everyone can be the problem, can be the solution as well. We need to understand that everyone needs to have a hand in the conversation so that we can go beyond this, so that we can actually see the sunshine at the end of the rainbow.
As they say, it takes a village, yes?
Absolutely.
So we were very lucky to have a community member who came with us every meeting. She never missed one. And we had one, so we're super excited. So Joanne would like to address you guys.
Just a quick little addition. She's only saying that because I brought the food to the pre-meeting tonight. But it was a great pleasure and privilege to work with all the teachers. That's why I let them do all the talking. However, Margaret's last idea about having not just a SOMO, but a disciplinary.
If you could,
sorry, I'm sorry. Just having a discipline, you'd think I'd know by now. Just having a disciplinary committee, department to follow up and be accountable. One of the recommendations up on the screen was moving, rather than hiring new people, moving people around and to make this new department with what we already have in our possession. So I think that could happen without new hires if we follow one of the recommendations. Also, just a couple little things she mentioned as a kindergarten teacher, so practical, getting the parents to sign a contract, putting behaviors up on the wall, expectations, or anyway. I just wanted to comment on the discipline department kind of thing.
Let me just say one thing to Ms. Joanne Kern. From all the times that you've been up here speaking, I want to say thank you for taking the opportunity to be a part of a solution. And it was a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy, and not just saying things you don't like, but actually trying to do something to make it better. So thank you very, very much. I do appreciate that.
Some of what you brought to us as a community is what was taught in APL training, and we haven't had APL training in quite a while. That might be something we want to go back to. And I know with the first week of school with APL, we taught expectations, and it sounds like we're not doing that as much as we used to. That was a costly program, but a very good program.
I agree that APL is a very important thing because it sets those standards and those expectations, but we need to be very cautious that it's just not on one part of the operation of education. That yes, that needs to be occur, but we need to also have communication with our administration, our parents, all those, because we all have a hand in it. But I absolutely agree that we need to go into strategies to help with classroom management. You do that, you help with that positivity, and you help with establishing that atmosphere that everyone can learn and everyone is capable to have success. So I absolutely agree with that, but we also need to make sure that everyone understands the responsibility and that we all have our hand in finding the solution.
Thank you all very much for all of the hard work that you put into this and the hours and days and just the time and effort that was put into this. I appreciate it. And Dr. Bishop, I mean, you're aware, federally we have to follow the Safe Schools Act. Statewide, we're to follow Code 4373. And if you could just look at, those are the minimums that we have to do. If you could just look at incorporating the detail of the racial slur policy into those tiers of the 4373, maybe in more detail than just vulgar language or whatever the item might be, that might be incredibly helpful. And between you and Mrs. Dallas Lewis, maybe this can be part of professional development for the beginning of the year for all staff, because it just sounds like you need support and just education on it. And if we all understand the rules, then we can all follow the rules.
And that's what we found. Like, our biggest thing was just we had no idea we had the support. So here we are feeling like we're out on an island all by ourselves to fight all the battles. And to the point of, like, even as teachers, I can't tell you how many kids came to my room for a behavior problem because admin is dealing with the bigger behaviors, but we still have the little ones too. So,
And I think that parents really need, and maybe, I know it's going to take a lot to roll it out, quick, but I really feel that, because I know that some of my parents, they have to understand that there is a problem and know that their child is, they need to know what it is and what these rules are before all of a sudden their child comes up in trouble, and then they're like, what, and then you get appeal after appeal. Well, here is the clear and concise. These are the rules that we are going to follow, for this school year. Here are the consequences for these, for these actions. And I know that the new policy that just was signed, 2340, House Bill 2340, 20. I used to know this, and now I'm on summer break for a little bit. It's gone. But I don't know if policy has been written on that, but it is even a little more specific about these clear and concise consequences for things. How many incidences equals, one ISS. If there's 3 ISS, I think within the month, it turns into an OSS. So parents need to know this going into it, and I feel like there's going to be less argument when we hold them accountable as well.
Thank you all. And also, I would like to thank the parents of the county, our black parents who work with Superintendent Bondi Lauren Gibson to work on that policy. And just thank you. It took you a year to do it, to do something that we haven't been able to do. I grew up in Jefferson County. I went to school to the Jefferson County schools. So that was something that wasn't done. I'm not going to say it wasn't able to be done, but it wasn't done over the years. So we do thank you, and we do thank you for taking the time out of, I'm sure, your busy schedules from your families and friends and family events to work on everything. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have board member comments or committee reports. Mr. Osborne?
I was on a conference call at EPIC. We have under participation in our Head Start and Early Childhood program. This is mainly due to lack of instructors. This is a problem that's nationwide that all Head Start and Early Childhood programs are having. And so please, if you can find us instructors for early childhood or Head Start programs, we have a tri-county, 3-county program, Morgan, Jefferson, and Berkeley, and we can fill more slots if we get more teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Ogden?
I would just reiterate again just how difficult it was to lose Mr. Edwards this week. And he actually pretty much started that Jefferson swim program in 1972, I believe. Honestly, I don't think that the Panhandle would have swim without Mr. Edwards. He was also obviously the tennis coach as well for a long, long time. But I know for myself, for Ms. Skinner, for Dr. Joy as well, all of our children experienced swim, and he was great at numbers. He knew where to put kids for those points. He was like a statistician in his head, and they started nicknaming him King Eddie, and so they would call him King by the pool, and I think he loved that too. But he loved the kids, and he literally gave his entire life to support the kids. So I saw over and over again comments that say, well, I may not have agreed with him sometimes with his decisions, but he loved those kids, and I always, most of the time, came back and thought, Coach was right. So just I hope he's fully healed and playing a good game of tennis and taking a good swim. So he will be sorely missed.
Dr. Joy?
Yeah, I just felt like more needed to be said about Coach Williams also. He was more than just a swim or tennis coach. Just about every year, the swim team beat regionals. They went to states and won lots of medals, the same with tennis. And he was completely committed to the students. Anyway, so he will be missed and be hard to replace him. The other thing I wanted to do is recognize the employee that several people commented on Shelby Todd, and the general theme is that she always responds logically and reasonably in a timely manner to employee concerns. So I'd like to this week recognize and show appreciation to Shelby Todd.
Ms. Bratton?
My condolences to Coach Edwards, to Coach Edwards' family, and friends. Coach Edwards was actually my driver's ed teacher when I was at Jefferson High School, and I'll never forget, we went out one day, we usually went on the back roads, and there was this really sharp curve, but I saw this big truck that was coming around that corner. So I just pulled all the way over to the side as far as I could on that curve and started honking my horn so that the truck knew we were there, because that's what he had taught us. And after that truck came burrowing around that curve, he looked at me and said, you just saved our lives. And from that point on, I always, every time I walked in the classroom, I would be like, Mr. Edwards, can I go out today? He'd say, sit on that front row by that door and be ready. So he will be missed. He was a really good guy, good coach. I also want to take just a minute to say welcome again to you. I'll call you Dr. Chuck because I like that. So welcome, Dr. Chuck. And, you know, we're on the ball. Let's go. And welcome to your family as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to the West Virginia School Board Association and the West Virginia Superintendents Administration Association. They had a mandatory meeting for superintendents or new superintendents and school board presidents yesterday that Dr. Bishop and I attended. And I think it was a very good meeting. There are 22 new superintendents in the state of West Virginia, so 22 out of 55, and a new state superintendent this year. So there's been a little bit of turnover, but I think that we have one of the best ones. So don't tell anybody else, but I think we did well. So welcome, Dr. Bishop. All right, and now, Dr. Bishop, do you have any superintendent comments for us this evening?
All right, there we go. I think some of you watched some of my former board meetings and thought I talked too much and put me over there without a microphone. I had to get up and ask Joyce, when do I get to speak? So I agree that the policy that the board's adopted with regard to racial slurs should be melded with the current 4373. We'll start working on that. Would you like that for the next meeting, 2 weeks, 1st of August?
If we could get it done before the beginning of school, that would be great.
All right. So we'll start working on that to make sure that we have that incorporated into the policy as it's written currently. Thank you to our Discipline Advisory Committee for the work that they did, and they're exactly right, but I can tell you that inconsistency in application of policy doesn't exist just here. It exists in many places. It's not an excuse, it's the reality. So we need to do a better job of making sure that our folks understand what policies are, what their rights and responsibilities are within those policies. So we'll work on that as well. And finally, just thank you to each of you for giving me this opportunity. Staff has been amazing to me, and I appreciate that. Today, Lisa and I had donuts and coffee that were delivered right outside our door. Although I don't eat a lot of donuts, just a few. It was very much appreciated, and everybody's been so gracious and helpful already. So thank you, and maybe I can get a microphone in the future and participate in some of this conversation. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to go into executive session for number 3 from the consent agenda, as well as legal for an employee grievance? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Ogden. All in favor, say aye. Oppose? All right, thank you very much.